Hey guys, it's Kevin from News Rocky coming to you again here today to talk about some of the most important topics of the day going on throughout this great country, America. We've had so many things going on, so many changes and so many policies under this new administration, sweeping policy change, some are saying. His orders seem to be, his executive orders seem to be coming out fast and furious. But the one question we want to ask here on the News Rocky Show, because we are very, very supportive of the blue, Back the Blue, the law enforcement, men and women across this country who we know are the backbone of the last line of defense between the evildoers that walk among us. This group of people have been targeted by the Democrat and Liberal Party, not just over this election, but for years. Defund the police. Let's get more social services. Let's reallocate money for here or there. Let's not buy this type of equipment. We can't have officers with canines. A long list of opposition policies from Democrats and Joe Biden. On this show, News Rocky, we're going to dive right in and get into what is the actual policies that Joe Biden's going to have. Is he going to defund the police? And are the men and women in blue going to be in danger? On News Rocky. Hey, welcome back to News Rocky, guys, and we're here today. We're going to dive into a topic. I think it's very appropriate that we're going to talk about something that we're passionate about, as the opening comments I noted. We are a Back the Blue program. I 100% back the men and women of law enforcement in this country. Do I think that sometimes reform is necessary? 100%. Do I think most of the time the claims against blue, meaning the officers, men and women, people of multicultural backgrounds who represent our community safety programs throughout this country, they get lambasted by the national corporate media. If you watch what took place over this past summer, where George Floyd was killed and he was murdered by a corrupt police officer, there is no one denying it. And the justice that should be heard should be in the courtroom. We've seen other issues in this country. You can go back in history under Barack Obama, when most of this energy of Black Lives Matters surfaced here in this country. If you remember the incident with Michael Jones, who actually was shot while trying to steal the gun of an officer in Ferguson. That was the beginning of this energy, and Black Lives Matters was born. Now let me say this, as I've said on this show, the News Rocky Show stands by our comments. I'm not going to waver. I believe Black Lives Matters is a voice that should be heard. I'm a big believer in the First Amendment. You should be as well. If you believe in the First Amendment rights, you want to hear that of the people who feel oppressed. If they're oppressed, we'll understand. And we as a people should be working to fix those problems. Unfortunately, when you deal with the issues of today, they're amplified by corporate media and political rhetoric. What kind of political rhetoric is going to apply towards Joe Biden's policies? Well, the same things he talked about on the campaign trail, depending on what community he was campaigning in, could change the outcome of this president and backing the blue or defunding the police in America. We're going to learn a little bit about that in a second. I want to go to a video here and open up. We're going to have a couple videos we'll bounce back and forth with, have some comments. Let's listen to Joe Biden and some of his comments as he then was campaigning.
I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts.
The president has a big stick.
We choose truth over facts.
Check my shape on it. Let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do.
One man stands ready to deliver change we desperately need. A man I'm proud to call my friend. A man who will be the next president of the United States, Barack America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama. We can speak out and be more straightforward.
I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
Hillary Clinton is as qualified or more qualified than I am to be Vice President of the United States of America. Let's get that straight. And quite frankly, it might have been a better pick than me, but she's first rate.
I know I'm called middle class, Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. It means I'm not sophisticated. I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts.
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape on it, let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do.
To the words united. Get him, Joe.
to the number 30330, 30330, or 303-330, or BOO. Wait, but you got it. That saves billions of gallons of gasoline. I mean, billions of I think it's $2.3 billion worth of, $500 billion in savings and 2-point-something billion metric tons of CO2 going in the air. Well, folks, eliminate one tax loophole out of $1.6 trillion worth, $1.4 trillion worth. Out of $1.4 billion. It's hard to even say it, it's so much. And by the way, it's cost a lot of money. It cost about $740 billion over 10 years. Now is the time to heed the timeless advice from Teddy Roosevelt. Speak softly and carry a big stick. End of quote. I promise you, the president has a big stick. I promise you.
Joe, you want to administer the oath?
Am I doing this again? My memory is not as good as Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts. I was a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids.
In Delaware, the largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
Chuck Graham, state senator's here. Chuck, stand up, Chuck. Let him see you. Oh, God love you. What am I talking about?
He's in a wheelchair.
I tell you what, you're making everybody else stand up, though, pal. Thank you very, very much. His mom lived in Long Island for 10 years or so. God rest her soul. And although your mom's still alive as your dad passed. God bless her soul. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
All right, so here we go. I wanted to open with that. I wanted you to see Joe Biden. You know, it's hard to hate Joe Biden. Joe Biden's a likable guy. He's down to earth, and maybe he is the average guy, average Joe. Maybe he's the guy that made it through as the youngest senator ever to get into office. Maybe he's the youngest senator to get into office and to achieve the things that he was able to achieve. 48 years in politics until he gets elected. By the time he will have 52 years in politics if he makes it 4 years as the president of the United States. I highly doubt he's going to make those 4 years. And these policy conversations that we talk about, as much as we can shed, a little a smile and crack a smile and look at Joe Biden and say, that's a funny, down-to-earth guy. You have to worry about that kind of rhetoric. You have to worry. But you see, the corporate media, what they've done is they've really defined their position. They've taken an attempt to really defend Joe Biden over the last year plus. But they haven't done the same thing. It's not fair for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, who I don't want to talk much about unless we have a comparison. But the comparison here is those very words you heard coming out of Joe Biden. If those words came out of Donald Trump's mouth, the entire national corporate media would be salivating and circling the wagons with their intent to kill Donald Trump, which they successfully have done with killing his First Amendment rights here in the country during that final days in office when he was shut down from every platform and no longer allowed to be heard. Interesting things in Washington, D.C. take place every day. But the fact of the matter, you, the American people, we, the American people, the News Rocky Show, what if they come in tomorrow and say, we cannot do our material here. We cannot produce the research we put in and the information that we want to share and have a conversation with our viewers and supporters with, because it doesn't get in line with what this president and administration wants. That's a worrisome position to be in. That worries me. It worries you. It should, if you have a love for your country. If you love your democracy, if you love your country that provides you with the greatest opportunities on earth. You should want to fight against that, Democrat or Republican. You should stand up against that kind of tyranny. Let's talk about this. This past year, in 2020, we had a George Floyd incident that took place in March. We were now into the COVID situation from January to March. Lockdown was getting overwhelming and burdensome for many communities. Crime was, although dropped initially, was going up. The hard problem was to control people getting back out into the streets. There was limited manpower. A lot of the police departments were overwhelmed with the COVID responses. There was a lot of law enforcement across this country who lost their lives to COVID, as well as were the first ones to get diagnosed in many communities throughout the country. The Back to the Blue concept that News Rocky has isn't very new here. This is something we've been consistent with. I'm a former and retired correction officer of 21 years. We have friends and partners on this program and that come compete or contribute. They are former or current law enforcement professionals. We know the jobs that are being done by these men and women across our country. They should be recognized as heroes each and every day, just like the nurses dealing with COVID right now, but on a different level. See, when a police officer pulls over a suspect, they don't know what that suspect has. And quite honestly, the defunding of police, and I will get into it, Joe Biden has flip-flopped on this conversation in every which way but loose. Worse than Clint Eastwood with that monkey driving down the road, flipping back and forth, doesn't know what direction to go in because it's been a campaign promise to Joe Biden. Joe Biden has been campaigning for president for 48 years, and what he knows is one thing. It doesn't really matter what you say as long as you say it to the crowd you're in front of. It doesn't matter what you say as long as you know what you're saying in front of the crowd you're in front of. You have to talk to the crowd, and Joe Biden, he is a master at speaking to the crowd in front of him. He knows exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it. And quite honestly, I give him credit. He's an amazing politician. Even in all his fumbles, all his follies, all his confusion, all his, sort of self-awareness of how confused he is, he still has achieved because he knows what he has to do in front of the people he's in front of. Now, when he gets in front of a crowd, say in one of the more democratic communities in the country, you can think of a few of them. You got into Virginia, New Jersey, those locations. We're going to defund the police. We're going to cut the money where it goes to law enforcement. We're going to reevaluate the situation. We're going to reallocate these monies. Now, what he's talking about, guys, just so you know, on News Rocky, I want to kind of share with you that the Department of Justice has a fund. The DOJ actually has funding that goes to each state across the country. Now, part of those requirements are for the states to cooperate with this funding source for DOJ money. And in some cases, it's only $1 million. In some cases across the country, there's many millions of dollars that are issued to these special programs and opportunities. What you're going to see happen is they are not going to go and defund police when it comes to the federal level. What they're going to do is take the DOJ money and they're going to reallocate that money into more socialized programs. They want to do more diversion programs. They want to invest more money into school and early education. They want to invest more money into treatment programs. They want to declassify certain crimes so the crime rate can continue to drop while crime continues to rise. That's a peculiar one I don't really understand. But you're going to see these policies take place under Joe Biden. Joe Biden has said on several occasions, I am not going to defund the police. I'm going to reallocate money so law enforcement can do a better job. And we're going to hold them accountable. Very ironic that this guy, your guy, the Democratic President of the United States, is going to hold them accountable. He's going to hold them accountable, folks. Because see why he was in the Senate? That was his job then. Why he was the vice president for 8 years? It was his job then. How all of a sudden is he now going to hold police evildoers responsible? See, remember, you got to remember now, this is the mystery here. Joe Biden opened up in his remarks in his inaugural speech that he's going to take on these terrorists, these national troublemakers. You see, he never named Antifa. He pointed a finger by using his tongue. It's kind of creepy, but he did. His language, his words. He said Trump, people who supported Trump, were coming after you. He's calling you, the Trump supporters of this country, terrorist. Terrorist. That's what he's saying. And at the same time, with the same cheek, he's going to just come out of the different pie hole that he has, and he's going to tell you how he's going to defund law enforcement across this country. You know, I get frustrated when I hear defund because To me, that's not the opportunity. See, the opportunity is to engage. Engagement doesn't cost much money, by the way. It costs time. It costs opportunities to sit down and talk with people, to understand why we're in a situation in this country. Why do we have racial disparity that takes place? I believe it's true. On a smaller when you have a minority population that is the majority of arrests, there is a problem. But where is the problem starting? Is the problem starting at the law enforcement professionals that work in these communities, Democratic-controlled communities throughout this country, who seem to forget each and every time when they promise, just like we're being promised now by Joe Biden, the President of the United States, he's going to fix this problem. They've been fixing this problem for 40, 50 years. Over that. Now, let me retract a little bit, and I want to get off topic just a tad. This is not Joe Biden's fault. Just like racism was not Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump did not invent racism. Racism has been around since the beginning of time. You want to say out there, the anti-Trump people, you want to say, well, what Donald Trump did is he allowed it was made okay for racism. Are you kidding me, man? Wouldn't you rather know who might be thinking what? Or do you want some sucker walking around, fake smiling at you, patting you on the back? I'd rather know who the scumbags are, the racist piece of shits that they are, so we can all work together. Out them. See, so you lose value in that. Corporate media, Don Lemons, go squeeze them, because you're wrong. Your accusations about the previous administration were nothing than trying to stir the pot. And you were wrong.
Chip, you have a video you want to play about Biden?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me cough it out.
You want me to do it?
I'm going to go right to it now. You ready? You were wrong then and you're wrong now. I want to go to a video now. Let's see this next one as we talk through this defunding the police and getting into some of Joe Biden's policies.
Leaked audio posted by The Intercept. President-elect Joe Biden saying that Republicans used the defund police movement to, quote, beat the living hell out of Democrats. Peter Ducey picks up the reporting live in Wilmington, Delaware. Peter.
And it was a listening session on Tuesday, Bill, that this audio has now leaked out from, but the listening that Joe Biden was doing also came with a warning from Joe Biden for these prominent civil rights leaders that Republicans beat the hell out of Democrats at the ballot box when the talk turns to defunding the police.
They've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change policing, which I promise you will occur. Promise you. Just think to yourself and give me advice whether we should do that before January 5th, because that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
And January 5th is the day of the Georgia runoff, so Biden is obviously concerned about messaging Republicans talking about Democrats defunding the police and the impact that that could have on their chances there. I reached out to the transition team about this leaked audio and what they make of it. An official tells me this: President-elect Biden is the same person behind closed doors that he is in public, honest, direct, and realistic about the challenges facing our nation and the day he is sworn in. As he made clear throughout the campaign, he believes in supporting bold and urgent reform to our criminal justice system while continuing to support law enforcement's mission to keep our communities safe. The president-elect is here in Wilmington today. No public events on the schedule until tomorrow afternoon, when he's going to announce some new White House staffers, including Susan Rice. Bill?
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you for that. And so we heard there an opportunity for our now President Joe Biden to be heard on the record. And the interesting part about that piece right there, let's break it down. As we heard Joe Biden, this was, they say it was a piece of video that was sneaked out and kind of put out there. I kind of think it was purposely done. I think this is a sort of what typically happens is conflict management. They wanted to gauge what was going on out there. The January 5th election was huge. God damn. Take 1 minute. The January 5th election for the Senate in Georgia was a very big deal. And unfortunately at the time, Joe Biden really didn't know which side of the argument that would land in Georgia. Ironically, we know, fast forward, that the Georgia races were pretty handily won by the Democratic candidates. Had no effect on them then. Ironically, moving forward, now we have President Joe Biden. President Joe Biden, who can go back in history, be quoted because of the video that we can resurface, and or the quotes in the brave and bold national corporate media, print media that is, which is very few and far between. There's not much out there of that. So in some of the reports, it's very hard to find. But right here we have, we would begin with the Joe Biden who said he would redirect budget policy and police money to non-police areas. That's right. Biden made that statement on July 8th when he replied, yes, absolutely, to an interviewer who asked him, but do we agree that we can redirect some of that funding? The defunding is the piece that is very curious. So when Joe Biden comes out and says, I'm going to defund, I'm going to redirect, though. I'm not defunding, I'm redirecting. You heard it. What Joe Biden is saying, he's defunding. He's going to take the money from law enforcement who functionally needs that money to operate at the levels for which they do. You got to remember, guys, they're talking about some of the most dangerous communities, the most dangerous communities in the country that you can think of. I can tell you that in the world that we live in today, Chicago stands out as a dangerous community. When you look at the other parts of the country, we have some real dangerous communities where law enforcement are really, it's like a military war each and every day they go out to the streets. Joe Biden wants to defund you. Joe Biden wants to partner up with I will say that Kamala Harris, the vice president, has been very vocal. In fact, if you remember in the debates of the Democrat debates that took place, Kamala Harris not only called Joe Biden then a racist, she also called him out on his policies on criminal justice. You know, Joe Biden is obviously attached to a law that he helped pass while serving in the Senate, one of the toughest crime bills ever to be passed in this country. In fact, many of the individuals that Donald J. Trump, the 45th president, was able to let out of prison early and or expunge their record. The pardon system was taken advantage of. And I think the last day in office, Donald Trump hit somewhere around 150 pardons. A lot of those folks were incarcerated under the very laws that Joe Biden passed. You see, the double-talking politician, now our president, Joe Biden, I want him to, he's my president too, but you can't get behind someone who double talks. His entire career has been spent about talking to the population, the public in front of him at the time. He will change his topic from person to person. He is a obvious politician. And when I look at somebody who says, I'm going to defund the police, I want to ask that person why. What would make sense about defunding the police? We're in the state of Connecticut here. And in Connecticut, we passed, not we, the legislature, before COVID hit, passed during COVID, passed the police reform bill. Here's an interesting part about that. The legislature then was not in session. The governor was in office. He has executive powers, which he's trying to expand here, Governor Lamont here in Connecticut. We're going to get into a show on that really soon. And what this governor was able to do is, during the George Floyd incident that took place, as a solution to that here in Connecticut, they called the legislature in to pass a police accountability bill. This bill, ultimately at the end of the day, tells police officers that you really don't have any defense if you are being accused against anything you've done. Now, if a police officer is involved in a shooting, there's a process and policy, and it's followed here in Connecticut. Connecticut has some of the strongest laws in the country. But again, marching to the mantra, marching to the politics of the party, marching to the corporate media, Ned Lamont, his administration, and many of the, I would say, those people on the party politics line here in Connecticut, they passed this law, Police Accountability Bill. Now, at the national level, this is what this guy wants. He wants a police accountability bill. He wants to make it, and some of these parts of the bill, even I can agree, are sensible. There are parts of mental health that are so lacking attention on every level, including the folks that serve as men and women in blue. We need to look at that across the board. Unfortunately, when you hear the concept of slashing budgets, defunding, and they're supported by people like Congressman Waters. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Congressman Waters, but she's an interesting fella out there, out in the California area. She's been serving many years, and she has been very vocal about defunding the police. Now, there's not just her, AOC. We have so many folks that are more progressive, more socialist-minded, who are in office now. How is Joe going to fight against his own party when his vice president, Kamala Harris, is also pushing the same agenda? I have a feeling what Joe's going to do is take the easy ride. He's going to push this reform off to Kamala Harris. He's going to allow her to do the dirty work. They're going to push through laws. If you're in law enforcement, men and women, I want to warn you today. Your livelihood is going to change over the next 24 months. The laws of the land of this country, not at the local state level, at the federal level, they're coming after you. They want to hold you accountable for the accusations that are being made. Guys, we talk about what inspired Black Lives Matters. Yes, the actual reality of Black lives being deprived an opportunity in this country, it's real and it should be addressed. But when they use the shooting of Michael Jones, and when they look at that situation in Ferguson, and it was allowed to be amplified by corporate media, and the socialist movement of political foe in this country took upon themselves to come out in front of this issue and start to denounce police and law enforcement. This is where the trouble started. But we allow the corporate media to put out a narrative that Joe Biden is going to defund the police. He is going to defund the police. He is going to stay party line. He's going to hurt your livelihood as men and women in blue. He's not going to take the effort to make sure that you have better training, make sure that we spend money in that location, make sure we give more money to the police and law enforcement to get better tools, non-lethal tools for that matter. Let's do something really important, Joe. Why don't you inspire law enforcement to reinvest in them for non-lethal force? Equip these men and women across the country with all the equipment you can. Rather you go and throw money into Yemen and everywhere else across the world, because that's the political relationship you have for the backdoor deals of the CIA control of the entire country and world. You see, Joe, it's time to stop playing politics. Are you going to defund the police or not? We want to know. News Rocky wants to know. The people who watch News Rocky want to know, and I guarantee you this, even the Democrats who support this show, they support men and women in blue. Keep commenting, guys. I keep seeing them. I love it. Keep talking to us. Keep writing us the messages. Keep sending in what you think. I don't care if you agree, and honestly, when you do, I appreciate you more than the people who disagree. But I want to hear everybody's point of view. You're important to this show. The topic of today was all about defunding the police. We went into a couple of videos. I wanted to show you that about Joe Biden in the beginning because it's the character of Joe Biden. Guys, if that was Donald Trump, he would be lambasted, he would be hung in the town square, and the corporate media, Donnie Lemon and Cuomo and the rest of the early Joe, we can go down the long list of them. And by the way, Fox News is not much better. I'm just giving out my feelings on these ones that would actually exploit that. But when you see Joe Biden make a mistake, they cover for him. You see, when it comes down to the reality of what we deal with today in this great country, our democracy has been kidnapped. It's been taken away from all the people. And guys, people like me who speak out like this, we're in danger. We're in danger because they're coming after us. Talk about defunding. Talk about the opportunity where they will try to shut down every platform that speaks out against what they're about. Defunding the police is the first and worst thing they can do. Well, actually, it's not the first and worst. The First Amendment rights is the first. But they're coming after the police. And after they defund the police and they weaken their ability to protect the people, they're coming after your guns. Your Second Amendment rights, you might as well look at them and kiss them goodbye, because I will guarantee you over the next 4 years, the policymakers, and the people who control the keys to the Capitol, the Senate, Congress, and the White House are going to change your quality of life. So if you're a Second Amendment guy, I want you to dig in. They're going to make you into a felon. They're going to make you into a felon. They're going to pass laws that are the strictest laws in the world, in the history of this world, in the history of this country. They want to take our guns away. They want to defund the police. Think about it. They do one at a time. They're successful at it. we will start seeing civil wars in the streets of this country. You defund the police, Joe, you'll start to see what's happening right now out in obviously in different parts of this country. We have Antifa.
My apologies. I couldn't hear what you said.
We have Antifa, who is out there in Washington, who is out there causing all kinds of trouble and mayhem. We have problems across this country each and every day that we sit and we commentate on, but the national corporate media really doesn't do much about it. You know what they talk about? They talked about Donald Trump inspiring the one bad issue that took place at the Capitol. And many reports are coming back, guys. We'll be talking about on News Rocky, but they won't be talking about in corporate news, is there was many bad actors there. We know Black Lives Matters members were at that Capitol that day. We know there were people from Antifa that were there. We know that QAnon was there. There was all kinds of folks there with causing trouble. They took and arrested the leader of the Proud Boys, who wasn't even involved. Days earlier, he got ejected from Washington, D.C. This is the kind of control of the narrative and the democracy that we live in, your First Amendment rights. This guy wants to defund the police first. He's going to defund your First Amendment rights. He's going to defund, he's going to take away your Second Amendment rights. And you will watch. You will not be able to speak up on platforms like this soon enough. We're the News Rocky Show, coming to you live Monday through Friday. Each and every day we come here at 4 o'clock.
Another video, right? Speak the truth. You want to watch it?
What's that?
The Speak the Truth video?
Yeah, man. You know what? Go ahead. I'm fucking this one up.
Introduce.
Guys, we're getting ready to finish up here, but I want to go to this last video. Let's talk about this after it's played. We'll get into it in a minute here. Play it.
This world. This world is so imperfect. It's full of pain and fear, despite all the chaos, all the judgment. We know that so many of you are good. We forget how human we are, how human we all are, including you. And that among all this sacrifice, mistakes can be made, and bad people do exist. We know that a world without you would not be better, but far, far worse. And for that, we thank you. We know how much of your sacrifice goes unnoticed, and we know that the worst of you get the spotlight instead of the best. So many of you have given your lives to protect ours, to keep us safe. We will not stand by and let your work go unnoticed. We will speak truth.
Guys, that video, I think, summarizes what I feel like, how I feel as a citizen of this great country, how I believe in the police and the law enforcement men and women across this country who put on the uniform each and every day. I believe 99.9% of them are honest, truth, and they are here to protect us, the American people. I believe when we look at police officers as the bad guy, and we take the bad actors and make them victims, that is the problem in our country. It's amplified by corporate media each and every day. Each and every day, there's a new narrative being spread for some purpose of control party politics. We're looking at Joe Biden. Is Joe Biden going to stick to his commitment of defunding the police, reallocating the money? Is Joe Biden going to do what's right for the people of this country? Even though he might have made campaign promises along the way, Joe, you can still do the right thing. The men and women in blue need to be supported because they're the backbone of supporting us, the American people. Thank you for tuning in to News Rocky today. It was an honor to talk about the men and women in blue. It's my honor to defend you each and every day here on the News Rocky Show. If we can do anything to help you, let me know. And those other folks that are out there, you have a question, you have an issue, you want to talk about a topic, send me a message. Keep on commenting here in the comments during the show, and join us again on the next News Rocky Show. We'll see you in the ring.